Hello, this is Tim Rice, and this is My Life in the Theatre. The first one in this pack of goodies is Jesus Christ Superstar, which opened in 1971, October, and it didn't do as well as it might have done. I think we were a bit ahead of our time, Broadway-wise. The Broadway audiences were not really those who liked rock in those days, and rock audiences didn't go to Broadway. There were two very different strands of music lovers. And it ran for a year, but bearing in mind the album had been a massive hit and sold about 5 or 6 million copies in the first year, in America alone. I think the show was expected by the producers anyway to have been bigger, but it just about got its money back. But the critics didn't go for it really. We weren't nominated, as far as I can remember, for anything. Something must have got something, maybe, lighting or whatever, I can't remember. It was a good show. We had a good cast. Tom O'Horgan, who'd done Hair, was the director. It was a bit wacky in a way, and we had trouble with the radio mics. We kept picking up orders for restaurants and taxis on the radio mic, so it looked like Judas was wanting a hamburger or Mary Magdalene wanted her hair done on 35th Street, which kind of interrupted the flow of the story. In the end, we had to ditch the radio mics. In a way, we were a bit ahead of our time there. Radio mics, of course, are now absolutely vital and everybody uses them. And we had to go back to hand mics, which was what rock singers used in those days, and still do, of course. And it seemed a bit awkward for Jesus and Judas to be sharing a mic and handing it from one to the other. And I think it didn't quite fit what Broadway was expecting at that time. But it did okay. And when it was done in London a year later, a lot of the technical things had been resolved, and London was a much bigger hit than it was on Broadway. But the piece has survived. It's interesting, it's never really done that well on Broadway. It's come back a couple of times and done okay, but it's never been revived in a big way on Broadway. But it's continued to go around the world almost indefinitely. I don't think I did have any expectations about Broadway. I was pretty new to the theatre business. We hadn't really had anything on anywhere of any significance before then. And the whole thing was just great fun. I thought, wow, what's going to happen next? And the auditions were great, and the cast were great, and meeting directors was fun. We did have a bit of problems, or Robert Stigwood, the producer, had a few problems with rival versions coming up, because when the record came out, it was a big hit, and there was no show, which was a fairly unusual situation. Hit score with no show, and a lot of pirate versions sprung up. And Robert was running around from state to state, suing them or trying to stop them. And I'm sure some of the shows are quite good, but we were told, don't go to one, because if you go to one, it will be a sign of approval. And I said, well, who's going to know we're there? And he said, we won't get recognised, we weren't known. But we didn't go, we didn't want to get sued by Robert Stigwood or anybody. So, and in the end, Robert thought, if we can't beat them, join them. And he set up a concert version of Superstar with the cast that ended up on Broadway. And frankly, that worked much better than it did on Broadway, because Superstar really is a rock show. And it was done quite recently in London, in the open air, and it was fantastic. And funny enough, in LA, Tom O'Horgan redid it in the amphitheatre, Universal Amphitheatre, with more or less the same cast. And it worked better in the open air. It's a big rock thing. It's more like Black Sabbath than Stephen Sondheim. Now, of course, Broadway and the West End have absorbed rock, and they can cope with it. And people who like rock are aged, crumbling like me. But we haven't changed our brilliant tastes. So it works really now the way it should have worked in the first place. We were just ahead of our time theatre-wise, and I guess record-wise as well, because it was a big surprise hit. Yes, the Broadway version of Evita was exactly the same, really, as the London version, directed by the great Hal Prince, who, of course, is American. He did a brilliant job on Evita. We'd had a hit album in England with it, not in America, funnily enough, but the word of mouth was quite good coming over to America, and the show of Evita that Hal did was pretty good. And we had a wonderful cast who should have come to New York, really, but in those days the unions were very stroppy about actors. Unless you were a mega star, you couldn't really easily move from London to New York or vice versa. And both countries, I think, were equally standoffish about that, which was silly. But Evita did really well in London. It got great reviews. I think critics had reluctantly come to the conclusion that we were going to be around for a while. It's probably harder to get a good follow-up to a big hit than to have the big hit in the first place. And we had had a big hit with Superstar, record and shows all around the world, and even a film, which was rushed out pretty quick. The follow-up was difficult. For a couple of years after Superstar's success, we didn't really worry too much about it because we were going around the world, we were enjoying all the productions everywhere. And I had this idea for a show about Eva Peron, who was somebody I had first heard of in my stamp collecting days when I was about 8. And Argentina was the first page in my schoolboy stamp collection book, stamp album. And I was impressed by the figure or the face of Eva Peron on the stamps. I didn't know much more about her. When I was 8, I knew that she was Argentine, she was beautiful, and she was dead. That was almost all I knew. When I was 24, that's still almost all I knew about her. And people in England, on the whole, knew even less than that. I was reminded about my interest in her as a little boy when I heard a radio program by chance in London. And I thought, this is a good story. And I wanted to find out more. I didn't immediately think, this is a show. I thought, this is somebody I was interested in and don't know much about. And the more I looked into it, and it's very hard to find stuff, there wasn't much written about her in English, and she'd been totally forgotten in everywhere except Spanish-speaking countries. The more I researched it, the more I thought, this is a good story. And I said, I thought this was something that Andrew and I could do really well. We'd had thoughts about doing a musical that was a complete contrast to Superstar, but I think that would have been a mistake, because by mistake, we'd stumbled upon our own form of doing musicals, which was different and has been copied a lot since. And again, we had the album out first. It was a mega hit in England, didn't do anything in America. But the songs gradually got known here, and the stories of the success of the London show creeped over here. And Hal Prince, of course, was American and a brilliant director. And Hal's version of Evita, which Andrew and I loved, was transferred wholesale to London. There wasn't much wrong with it, if anything at all. So there wasn't the what can we do to make it better feeling. The critics didn't like it over here. They thought we were promoting fascism and other stupid things. But the public loved it, and that's always been, you know, if you've got to have critics or public, you want the public. You don't want the critics. It's nice to have both, I guess. But Evita was genuinely theatrical. It was pretty original, I thought, in retrospect. And at the time, we were to write the English cast to go over there, not because they were brilliant, you know, compared with the American cast, but because we were Brits, that was all. Andrew and I were British, and we thought, why can't the British singers who did so well go over? But Union stepped in, and it was a pretty big hit here. And the songs became quite well known. Don't Cry For Me, Argentina in particular. And Evita's a bit like Superstar. It's gone on and has always been revived. And I'm very grateful for that fact. And the next one here is Joseph. Now, this actually was the thing Andrew Lloyd Webber and I wrote first of all. It was, in 1967, we were asked by a schoolmaster to write something for his kids for a school concert, which was a bit of a come down because we were trying to write musicals, and we'd written a musical and we weren't getting anywhere with it. But a schoolmaster friend of ours had heard our songs in this musical that never happened. And he said, while you're waiting for your inevitable fame and fortune, why don't you write something for the kids? And they were aged 8 to 11, boys only. And it was a one-off performance on a Friday afternoon before an audience of bored mothers who had no desire to sit through another school concert. But we enjoyed it, and the kids really loved it, and we began to make it taught us a lot. We began to be funnier in the approach of some of the songs. I mean, Joseph, in a way, is a very serious story. After all, it's in Genesis. But we were able to make it light-hearted without being disrespectful, which was very helpful when we found that out through Joseph. That was very helpful when he came to write Superstar afterwards. And we put it on in the school with a pop group and the kids. And it went down an absolute storm. They loved it. And we had to do it again. And amazingly, it got a review in the London Sunday Times, which was the big paper. The music critic, who was a very distinguished chap called Derek Jewell, had a kid in the choir. We didn't know that. And we were amazed after doing the show on the Friday night that we got a rave review in the Sunday Times. We had no idea he was even there. But he gave us a rave review, and that kind of got us going. From that, we got an offer to do an album of Joseph, not aimed at the rock market particularly, but aimed at the schools market. And we got a deal with a company who would publish the work as a thing for schools. And best of all, we got a management offer. And the people who signed us up for management offered us, I think the final offer was £3,000 a year each, guaranteed for 3 years, and all we had to do was to write something. And they would then take 25% and promote it and do all that. And that's what we did. And the first year of our deal, we decided to write this idea we had on Judas Iscariot, which became Jesus Christ Superstar. And when our managers in the second year of our 3-year deal with them tried to interest theatre people in London, no go. Nobody wanted to know. Oh, you can't touch that. Religion, forget it. And I wasn't that surprised, but on the other hand, we did think it was quite good. But the deal that the managers were able to get, David Land, a friend for life, he's no longer with us, sad to say, but David managed to convince a record company to do Superstar, and that was much, much better. It was kind of a fallback thing for us in the first instance, but doing it on record meant that we could have a rock band and an orchestra and great solo singers who could come in maybe to do a couple of days in the studio but couldn't do a long run of a show. Not that we would have had a long run of the show had we done it as a show first. It would have opened probably some out-of-town place and run for 3 weeks, and that would have been it. We wouldn't have had a big orchestra. We wouldn't have had a rock band. Back in 67, 68, which was way ahead of even 71 when Superstar had the problems, to get a rock band and a musical orchestra, difficult. So we did the record with Superstar, and the rest is history. And it was Joseph that set us off. And then it was after Superstar was a hit, people said, well, who are these guys? What else have they done? And the only thing we'd done before that was Joseph. And then we were asked to expand Joseph a little bit. And we had some offers to do that in the commercial theatre. And slowly but surely, Joseph took off in the commercial theatre and first came to Broadway in 82, I think. And the big thing about Joseph on Broadway, which was a good production and did okay, was that we had a female narrator. The narrator is a very important part in Joseph. In a way, almost more important than Joseph himself. And it was an all-male show at that point because, well, the original story is virtually all male. Joseph and his brothers. But B, we did it for a boys' school, and we never contemplated having a part for a woman in it. But the narrator, who is somebody not actually in the story, but tells the story and has a big part in telling it and has a lot of good songs, why couldn't we try that as a girl? And there was a wonderful singer, the late Laurie Beachman, who was sensationally good. And she died tragically young, and had she been around today, she would, I'm sure, be one of the great ladies of musical theatre. She had a wonderful voice, she was a lovely person, and she was the narrator. And ever since then, nearly all the productions have had a lady narrator, which is great because it balances out the show as its big part, as big as Joseph's part. And it makes it easier for ladies to perform in a school situation, if it's all girls, than it had done before. But it was the Broadway show in 82 that showed us that we could give a great part to a girl in that, and we did. Although Joseph didn't really become a commercial smash in England until about 1990, when Andrew produced a version with Jason Donovan, who's a big star in Australia, big star in England. He played Joseph. It was a big hit at the London Palladium, and then Joseph, ever since then, certainly in this country and to a great extent in other countries, it's become a staple of commercial fun theatre. It's interesting. It doesn't really translate very well. Musically, it does, I'm sure, but it's never really been a big hit in another language. I think, at least I like to think, I may be kidding myself, but I like to think that the language, very influenced by people like P.G. Wodehouse, which is a lot of slang, a lot of English slang, it's very hard to translate it. I remember going to see it in the Czech Republic, no, not the Czech Republic, the one next door to the Czech Republic, Slovakia. No, it was just on this side of the border. Anyway, it was in what was Czechoslovakia. And it was a great production, done beautifully, great singers, but it was in Czech. And the audience sat there and applauded, but it didn't get any laughs, except for the Elvis song. When he came on as Elvis, then that got a laugh, but that was only a visual laugh. And it suddenly dawned on me, if you have a phrase which in English language is silly and funny, like, and now this coat had got their goat, meaning pissed them off. It was translated I mean, the guy doing it, who obviously did a good job, but the guy in Czech Republic will say, got their goat. What does that mean? He looked it up, slang expression, meaning they were annoyed. So he translated it in Czech perfectly, accurately, as the brothers were annoyed. But it's not very funny. And I think that is why it's never really worked in French or German or whatever. I mean, it's been done in 1 or 2 countries, and the music is fantastic, but so much of it depends on sending up the English language. And sending up the Czech language is probably not as easy if you're translating it from the English. I don't know, I've never tried it. Anyway, good old Joseph, thanks to Laurie Beachman. I like to remember her. Next, Chess. This is Chess, Chess Mark I, Broadway, 1987. I think the less said about this, the better. The cast was great. Judy Kuhn, David Carroll. It was, I mean, the plot was changed, the story was changed. It was really long. I mean, you had to take a thermos flask and possibly a sleeping bag if you wanted to get to the end. It wasn't right. And funnily enough, it was fairly full during its short run, but when the Tonys came out, he got nominated for nothing, which I think Judy and David might have got, they should have got nominations, but it just didn't work. One of the mistakes was bringing it up to date, which was then 1988. It seemed that the news was changing so fast with perestroika and all that, and glasnost and Gorbachev coming in and Reagan and everything. And everything that happened in the news seemed to affect our storyline. It kept having to be changed. We go, oh no, the Berlin Wall's coming down. This is terrible news for us. Great news for the rest of the world. Things like that affected it. And in the end, the American won the chess game. I don't know. I just remember thinking, well before it opened, this is not going to work, which is a tragedy because the music that Benny and Bjorn had done is terrific. And again, the record had done very well. It did quite well here. One Night in Bangkok was a big hit. No one knew what it was about, mind you. It came out on a single, and it was kind of meant to forerunner for the show, and it was a big hit on the radio. And I often heard disc jockeys saying, hey, One Night in Bangkok, great record. I'm not quite sure what it's about, but it's a great record. And I thought, look at the label, you idiot. It says on it, One Night in Bangkok. It's about one night in Bangkok. But never mind, it was a big hit. And we're starting again, we're giving it another go. So who knows? I'm more optimistic this time. But you should never take anything for granted. But we have a wonderful team, so fingers crossed, and a great, great cast. We had a great cast last time. And I feel rather bad that they were lumbered in a show that didn't quite know where it was going. Right, Beauty and the Beast. Well, that is the great Alan Menken and, of course, the great Howard Ashman, the late great. And after the mega success of the film, Beauty and the Beast, and Alan and Howard wrote this most wonderful score, and it was decided to, Disney wanted to put it onto the stage. It sounds daft, but I can't remember whether Lion King was already on the stage by then. I don't think it was. No, Beauty and the Beast was the first Disney transfer to the stage, and it worked really well. And it needed some new songs because the film, like most Disney cartoons, when they come out in the first instance, only had about 5 or 6 songs. And you need more than that for a musical. I'm not absolutely sure that's always true. I think you can have too many songs, but I think you need more than 6. And Beauty and the Beast is a terrific story. Rob Roth did a great job directing it. Disney pulled out all the stops. But it's a great story. Story is king. You've got a good story, I wouldn't say you're halfway there, but you're at least 20% of the way there. I was asked to work with Alan, and I had worked with Alan already on the film of Aladdin. When poor Howard died, I was brought in to write 1 or 2 songs for the movie of Aladdin, which they hadn't quite finished. And one of them was A Whole New World, which was a big, big hit. So that was almost my sort of calling card. And they entrusted me with writing some new songs with Alan for Beauty and the Beast, which I did, and they seemed to come out quite well. Very nice one called A Change in Me, which Toni Braxton, the great Toni Braxton, sang when she played the role. I was rather annoyed it wasn't in the film. When they made the live-action film with Emma Watson, I thought Change in Me is a great song. Immodestly, I thought that. Great tune, reasonable words. And it wasn't in, but in a way that didn't matter because I was asked to write 3 or 4 new songs yet again for the film. So I must have written about 2 musicals worth of songs for Beauty and the Beast, some of which have actually made it onto the stage. But it's a great show, and it's always being done. I mean, it's being done all over the world all the time. And usually I think, whenever I go and see it, I think, I wonder which of my songs are in it this week. But usually 1 or 2 are. King David. Now, Alan Menken and I became great friends, and continue to be great friends and a great admirer of Alan. And we were asked by Michael Eisner, who was then running Disney and was impressed with Alan's success and my good fortune at Disney. And he asked us he said, you should do the second greatest story ever told, which is King David. And it's a great story. And we did it. We wrote it, and the original plan was to write it for Jerusalem, to be done in Jerusalem, celebrating the 3,000th anniversary of the founding of Jerusalem. But politics intervened, nothing like the tragedy of present times, but there was an assassination, and in the end it was deemed it was not going to be a good idea to take everybody over to Israel. And we recorded some very nice demos, and we did a big concert in New York, which we hope would lead to something bigger. It hasn't yet. I think it was a little bit rushed, the production, but Michael Ockrent did a great job directing it. One of those things that often happens in shows, it sounds great when it's in the sort of rehearsal process. You think every song, wow, how can this fail? But it was almost too much. It was almost too consistently, song after song after song. There wasn't quite enough light and shade in it. And we had 3 different orchestrators, and they were all brilliant, but they were all obviously trying to emphasize their brilliance, which they was totally justified in doing. But I think we had too many songs that were, each song was fine. Alan's music was perfect, but I feel too many songs in the performance we did were almost over-orchestrated. And I wouldn't criticize any bit of the orchestration, they were all great. And anyway, certainly orchestrations, a show shouldn't rise or fail just on that. But it was a good piece, and we have had some interest over the years to do something else with King David. I'd love to, because it's a great story. It's a bit long, our version, but we could always do it in 2 parts. I said part 1 should be David and Saul, and part 2 should be David and Bathsheba, or David and Absalom. There's an awful lot that can be done, but Judy Kuhn has sung some of the songs, and she was just marvelous. And at the concert we did in New York, in the New Amsterdam Theatre, Judy stopped the show with a song called Never Again, and it was wonderful. And the reason we were in the New Amsterdam Theatre was to plug the move, or the opening the move, it was the move, I think, of The Lion King to the New Amsterdam, which Disney had just bought and cleaned up 42nd Street. And The Lion King, well, what can I say about The Lion King, except it did quite well. And the show did even better than the film. I still, to be honest, the show is fantastic. Julie Taymor did a brilliant job. The cast have always been great. But something about that original cartoon that I really will always be my favourite bit. If anything else, because it's short. And it's Elton on top form. There are 5 main songs we wrote for the cartoon. Actually, I should say animated feature. If you say cartoon, Disney goes. It's not quite animated feature. It's actually a cartoon, but a brilliant one. And there were 5 songs, and there was sort of anthemic song, Circle of Life. There was a romantic song, Can You Feel the Love Tonight? There was a villain song, Be Prepared. There was a little boy's song, I Just Can't Wait to Be King. And there was a song about a warthog's wind problems, Hakuna Matata. And they're all different songs, and Elton rose to the occasion every time. I had to do the words first, because that's the way Elton likes it. And I'd send off these words, and I would think, I Can't Wait to Be King is not that like Be Prepared. But Elton's tunes managed brilliantly to capture the mood of each song that was different, and yet they're all unmistakably Elton. And he did say, I'm not sure that I think at this stage of my career I'd be writing a song about a farting warthog, but it's probably one of the biggest tracks he's ever written. I mean, it's extraordinary. I've done a concert tour recently in Britain, and when we do Hakuna Matata, they all go bananas. It was Lion King was great, and it's still running, coming to a theatre near you, wherever you are, no escape. Right, Aida, that is the great ignored show of all time. Amazingly, not because it was bad, but because we didn't think anyone would notice, it won Elton and me Tonys for Best Score. Neither of us went to the ceremony because, to be honest, in England we aren't aware so much of Tonys. You know, if we're there, if we're in town, oh yeah, we'll go to the Tonys. But I didn't even know that the Tonys were on. We probably got asked, but it got lost in the post, the invitation. And I was on holiday and I rang up my secretary. I remember I was in Venice, place dropping, and with pre-mobile phone days, and I rang her up from phone box in Venice just to see what was happening, important things like, has the lawn been mowed, how's the dog, all that. And we had a long chat about those things, and I'd say, well, thanks very much, Eileen. And then she said, by the way, you won a Tony. And I said, really, what for? And she said, well, for Aida. I said, really, what, the show won or what? She said, you and Elton won for Best Score. I was like, oh, that's rather nice. Was Elton there? No. So I think that somebody says this is disgraceful, but you know, they should have pestered us more. And I was going on a holiday. It was the year 2000. I was on a holiday with a friend who invited a whole lot of people out to celebrate the millennium. 2000. Sorry, that's why I remember the year. The show itself, I think, is a great score. It's one of the favourite scores I've ever done, and frankly, I think we deserve to win, although I can't remember what we were up against, so maybe I'm being rude about something brilliant. But it was a really great score, and we had a fantastic, I mean, Heather Headley, wow. I've been so lucky with brilliant divas, starting with Elaine Page, and then Laurie Beachman, and Julie Kuhn, and Heather Headley, I mean, and there are probably a few more. They're just great. There's nothing like a great musical lady, and she's one. And the whole cast was great. We started out in Atlanta, didn't quite work there, so changes were made, and then it came into Chicago, didn't quite work there, but we made a few more changes, and it came to Broadway. It didn't get great reviews, but it was okay, but it ran, and it did nearly 5 years. And I was very pleased with it, and I would love to see that one re-emerge. I think it's got some lovely tunes in it, which Elton was on top form. And I would say this, but I think it's, apart from Lion King, which was really written for the film, I would say Aida is his best theatrical score, because Disney wanted to write that, asked us to write it straight for the theatre first, which was a little unusual because everything I'd done with Disney at that point, and all the Disney shows at that point had been led by the animated feature that had been a hit. But this one, they said, no, we'll go for that. Because I think Michael, if I remember rightly, Michael Eisner said, why don't you write the story of Aida as an animated film? And while we were thinking about that, and probably would have said yes, he then said, we've changed our mind. We've had such success with Beauty and the Lion King, we'd like to go Disney theatrical straight away, which is fine. And I enjoyed Aida. It is a good show. It's never been to England, I can't think why. And I think it would be nice to get it on there. And I do get the odd strange English fan saying, when's Aida coming? But it's not very well known in England. But people here seem to quite like it. And there were a couple of good songs. Actually, there were 17 good songs. Right, Wizard of Oz. Wizard of Oz, I really had little to do with. That was Andrew's concept, Andrew Lloyd Webber. Good idea. He wanted to take the great Wizard of Oz musical and add a few songs. And I was asked to, he asked me if I'd add a few songs to it with him. I mean, we added 4, I think. I don't think there was one really good song called Red Shoes Blues, which the great Hannah Waddingham, who you may know through, what's it called, Ted Lasso, is it that the football thing? That was a great song. The other songs didn't really, they were fine, but so often I find in musicals, songs get interrupted by chat. And that really annoys me because, you know, it's not realistic in the sense. I mean, people singing their problems is not what happens, well, it does occasionally, but it's not what happens in everyday life. And when you sing a song, you want the audience to get into the song. And if halfway through somebody says, but on the other hand, and starts speaking, it kind of kills the song. And I felt with Wizard of Oz, that particular production, a couple of the songs we did were so full of perfectly good speeches, but I thought it didn't help the songs. Aladdin, well, I didn't have much to do with Aladdin either. I wasn't asked to do any new songs for Aladdin. Yes, I don't think I was. Whole New World, of course, was there already, and One Jump Ahead, and one or two other bits and pieces I did to try and replace Howard's contribution to the film. And Alan was able to bring one or two previous Howard songs into the score, which was great because they were very good. They probably hadn't made the film in the first place just for reasons of space. You know, the shows work really well. I've only seen it a couple of times, to be honest, but it always seems to me. I mean, my first time I went with my then 9 or 10-year-old daughter, and she absolutely loved it. But I did see it in London as well. And I saw Guy Ritchie's film version. So it's done well. It's a great score. I mean, Alan Menken knows what he's doing. Finally, last, possibly, probably not least, I hope, Chess, new version, revival. Again, the cast, I mean, I would add to my list of favourite brilliant divas, and it's the first time I've actually seen her in action and met her, and she's lovely. Lea Michele, I'd obviously seen her on television and on things, but never actually caught her in a show. Actually, that's not true. When she was very young, she was in that Spring Awakening. Yeah, and I mean, she was great. So it was a very interesting show directed by Michael Mayer, who has directed the new version of Chess, so there's a lot of good pedigree there. But I'd never, at that point, Lea was making her name, and since she became a megastar, I hadn't really seen it too much that she'd done, but her reputation was, and I now have seen her in Chess, and she's fantastic. Danny Strong wrote the script and retold the story, and we've got a wonderful cast. Anatoly being played by Nicholas, and Aaron is Freddie. They're outstanding. And of course, Florence played by Lea. And the tunes by Bjorn and Benny are just sensational. The ABBA boys. We've also got Mamma Mia running at the moment, which is a fun show. So that's about it. What will happen next? Probably nothing. I don't know. I think I should retire, really. I've done far too much. This interview has gone on almost as long as the run of the first Chess. But it's been fun talking about it. Oh, I'm knackered.